We will win. We will. He's been saying that for 3 years. Every time Zelensky comes to the United States, he walks away with $100 billion. I think he's the greatest salesman on earth. But we're stuck in that war unless I'm president. I'll get it done. I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out.
I'm Frank Vaughan for September 25th, 24, and let's compare and contrast what Trump just said to what is happening with Trudeau's little friendly leftist tour in the United States, which includes a feature presentation on Colbert, which was filled with platitudes and empty-headed rhetoric, but not much else. Canada is now billions of dollars in money and equipment into the Ukraine war. And that billions of dollars has bought Trudeau another shiny little medal that he can put on a shelf in his narcissistic way. But it was bought not just with the price of money, but with the price of 1 million dead young corpses. Nobody outside of Trump in the West is talking about how to end this conflict, which Ukraine cannot win. One of the ways in which the West, including its leadership and public, routinely fails the world is in understanding both sides in any conflict. A case study would be the Vietnam War, where we failed to understand the Vietnamese perspective, which was as a war of independence. They fought the French, then they fought the Americans, and then they fought the Chinese. They fought off two major world empires, and they would have kept fighting until they achieved their objective. We viewed it as an appendage of the Cold War. The Vietnamese people barely understood what the Cold War was all about because they were too busy fighting and dying in a war of independence. We are failing in Ukraine to understand the Russian side of the equation, how they see the world, and we're also failing to acknowledge how the West is directly responsible for this conflict. There was a coup, a Western-backed coup, in 2014, and then there was an unconstitutional election wrought with massive election fraud, which brought the current government into office. Now, Zelensky has only been the leader of the government since 2019, but the entire edifice of the Ukrainian government rests on top of a coup and an illegal election. We had the Minsk Accord, which would have brought peace to the region, but the Ukrainian side, with Western backing, failed to implement the agreements, leading to more tension, leading to more conflict. And all the while that this was going on, long before the Russian invasion, the Ukrainian government was indiscriminately shelling and killing people in the east of the country who had a different point of view about the national destiny. Human rights violations like you would not believe. There's all kinds of people who went to Ukraine to view these areas over the course of time, and you can see the damage, and you can hear their stories firsthand on YouTube, but you're not going to hear about them in Western media because the Western media is an adjunct, a direct arm of the government and the bureaucratic, the deep state, whatever industrial complex, whatever industrial, globalist, internationalist complex, whatever name you want to put to it, the media is now an arm of that effort. There is only one unitary point of view. It's all propaganda anymore. From the Russians' perspective, NATO has been empire building since the fall of the Soviet Union. There was an agreement between the West and the Russian Federation that NATO would not expand east. And what did we do? It's right there on the map. We expanded east right up to Russia's borders. And we would have done the same thing in Ukraine had they not invaded. Now we need to understand that the Russian perspective sees themselves as completely surrounded by the empire, which the West has spent decades building all over the world. And if you don't think that we are an empire now, I don't know what to tell you. It's our bases that are everywhere over the planet. And I say our because it is our. They are U.S. bases in the main, but the United States is the head of NATO. What the Americans do, if the Americans sneeze, the world gets a cold. So let's not pretend that the Republic is not a Republican empire at this stage of history. The Russians feel surrounded. They view this as a war of national survival, which is why there is such high public support in Russia for this war. And all the Western punditry that talks about unlimited funding, unlimited war, and even troops on the ground fail to understand this key factor. And what would troops on the ground mean? It wouldn't just mean Ukrainian death, it would mean the mass death of the entire civilization. There does come a point where the Russians have to use the weapons at their disposal, meaning nuclear weapons. And if we want to keep pushing them, we'll find that point eventually. And when we do, the entire world will pay the price for all the keyboard warriors who keep typing online about unlimited war, and they don't get on planes and they don't volunteer to go over there. They don't provide the one thing that Ukraine seems to need, which is bodies to feed to the Russian war machine. We have to end the conflict. And there's only one politician talking about ending the conflict, and that is Donald Trump. It's time to end the slaughter. Why is it controversial to want to protect what lives remain that are uselessly being destroyed over a political conflict that should have been resolved already? As cited before, at the beginning of the war, there was a peace deal ready to sign, and both sides were ready to sign it. And it was the West who intervened to stop that peace deal. This is our war. The blood is on our hands, and every single person who says that they are pro-war, pro-unlimited conflict, has that blood on their hands. And those very same people who say this is about Western security and about Western independence and about the safety of Ukrainian people, they are risking total global Armageddon. So they don't care about your security, they don't care about your well-being, and they certainly don't care one iota about Ukrainian lives. Otherwise, we'd already have a settlement. It would have been done, and we would have saved so much life. Now, I talked about how the media is an arm of the bureaucratic state. We know now, and we've known since the day it happened. I mean, I watched January 6th. I watched it happen live. I watched those police open the doors. I watched all those sucker people be lured into the Capitol building so that they could concoct this narrative of an insurrection. It's so clear as day that you have to really want to lie to yourself at this point, to hold to the narrative that there was some kind of revolution on that day. And now we know, just like Trump is the only guy calling for peace in Ukraine and trying to get it worked out, he was the only guy on January 6th who was calling for increased presence of the National Guard and police presences because so many people were there. He was assured that there was a plan in place, and everybody stonewalled him. And the reason they did so was they wanted him to look guilty. They had a narrative that they wanted to create. And so they did what they did. We know the truth now, but does the public actually care about the truth? We have the transcripts. We know what Trump was asking for. But we have to ask ourselves, and we're facing a referendum. The Americans are facing a referendum in November on whether or not the truth actually matters. Now, I know Trump is bombastic and he says things in ways that you don't like, but we're talking about the concoction of narratives. It's just like this idea that Donald Trump is going to abolish the Constitution. He never said it. The whole Charlottesville, very fine people, he never said it. It was obvious the day it happened. I watched it live. Trump never supported Nazis and neo-fascists and all the other terms they throw at him. It never happened. And yet, at the biggest day for the Democrat Party, the National Convention, they can still get on stage, they can still repeat the lie, and the lemmings and the Luddites applaud like something real has been said. Kamala Harris, right now, is living the biggest lie, maybe in American history. She is pretending to be the change candidate. She is pretending to be the solution to 4 years of problems caused by the government that she is second in command of. And yet her people and the pundits and the media and herself speak as though she is replacing the opposition without actually doing that. Because at the same time, she'll bring Joe Biden up on stage, she'll put her arm around him, and they'll pretend to be all buddy-buddy at the same time as she's pretending to be the alternative to everything they did together. It's upside down world. It's clown world. It doesn't make any sense. And that's not even getting into the polling that doesn't make any sense. For instance, Quinnipiac just released 2 sets of polls. One was in the swing states where they showed Harris dominating Trump, and then another was nationally where they actually show Trump in a statistical lead against Harris. Those two things don't work. There are fake polls put out all the time that oversample Democrats, that misrepresent independents or undervalue them, that target demographics which are known to vote Democrat more heavily so that they can skew the numbers, and then the media and the people on social media who are completely in the tank pick those numbers up and run with them. Yet we have New York Times Siena, we have Rasmussen, we have Atlas. These are the polling houses that make bank on getting it right. They successfully predict the outcome of national elections for a living. They do it accurately. We have case history. We can look back at their previous work and we can see how close they came to right. Now, all the polls, whether it's ABC or CNN or any of the other pollsters out there who contract these people to concoct these fake polls, we can also look back at their record and see how wrong they were, how much they overstate the Democrat support. We can see it. We have history. So we know that Rasmussen and Atlas and New York Times Siena and Harris, I hesitate to mention Harris just because it has the same last name as Kamala, and God knows if there's any people from the left that actually watch these videos. I wouldn't want to confuse anybody. But we have the case history. They all show Trump leading the race nationally, and they show him ahead in the swing states. Now, what are they doing? What are they leading towards? We know now, and this is officially found, it's part of history for those who care about accuracy. We know that cheating in the federal election happened. And just because it wasn't litigated by Trump, it's ongoing. The revelations keep coming out, but nobody in the media wants to pick it up because it runs counter to the narrative that they are committed to. There's the narrative, and then there's reality. And discernment between the two is of paramount importance now. We've got to get it right now before it becomes impossible. Like we have to take a commitment. We almost have to swear a vow, whether we're social media influencers or we're pundits or whoever we are, to just tell the truth and try to arrive at the truth as best we can. There should almost be some kind of association of honest people. Because with AI coming into its ultimate form in the coming years, it's going to be very hard to tell what is real from what is fake. And the only thing that's going to preserve us is a moral compass, a finely tuned moral compass. And look around at the civilization we live in. Look around at the society. Morality is in decay, especially in our cities. And we have to bring it back. To sum it up, I grew up with a liberalism that believed in peace. I grew up in a liberalism that was anti-war. I remember attending the protests out front of the U.S. consulate in Toronto against the Iraq war because we knew it was unjust. I remember the thousands of people marching lockstep against a war, and a lot of good it did. The war came and went, and we now know that we were right. But now, the only person in North American politics calling for peaceful resolution, prosperity, having the vision to talk about putting a man on Mars by 2028, I think that's the coolest thing. Elon Musk should absolutely be given the freedom to build out his space program. As a private individual with public funding, I don't care. The man is clearly motivated and delivering results better than everybody else, including NASA. Let's unleash that. Let's do something great with that. Becoming multiplanetary would be an incredible thing to see with what is left of my life. But all of these dreams, all of this vision for the future, the idea of liberating people from their wheelchairs, the idea of further developing technology and medicine in a proper way, not the fake medicine that we just went through 3 years of, but actual improvement in people's lives, fixing the food system. All the obesity that you see everywhere around North America, all the diabetes, most of the cancers, most of the heart disease, These are preventable diseases. They don't have to be. While the Canadian government sits and talks about pharmacare and giving people insulin, they're speaking mostly of type 2 diabetics who do not have to be diabetic. It's entirely reversible. We've got a lot of sick people taking up a lot of beds that don't need to be there because they don't want to change their lives. They don't want to, and they're being told that it's okay. When you take your insulin, I remember my dad going through that before he cured his type 2 diabetes. I remember him going to take his insulin, and I remember it was recommended the grains that he eats and all of this starchy, carbohydrate-rich food that he was still encouraged to eat, which was terrible advice. What they should have told him was to go on a carnivore diet and give his system time to rest, and his pancreas might just come back up and start restoring function and deliver insulin sensitivity. We can do that. And the former president, with his partner RFK, are talking about doing just that, focusing on prevention so that we can free up resources to do some really cool things with. But all of these ideas are predicate on the world surviving into the next decade. We need peace. We need prosperity. We need to be able to live together on this blue ball, as it's the only one we have right now. And I don't know when it happened. I don't know when the left lost its way. But now they are the neocons. Now they are the bad guys. Now they are the ones that want war more than they want any other thing. And they don't just want war in other countries. They want a war on you. They want a war on free speech. They want a war on people. They want a war on common sense. They want a war on your children, where they're telling them that they can have sex changes, that they can block puberty. They want to bring it to your classrooms. What more can I say? We need a movement towards common sense. And that's what I'm here to try and help do. I'm Frank Vaughan. I'll see you in the next one.